AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law move into our house permanently after she helped renovate it, even though she insists she earned that right. AITA here, I-35F, have been dealing with a situation involving my sister-in-law, Melissa, 33F, that has caused major tension in my household and strained relationships with my family. I'm unsure whether I am wrong or if she is being unreasonable. Some background. About 4 years ago, my husband, Dan, 37M, and I purchased our first home. It was a fixer-upper with outdated plumbing, an old kitchen, damaged flooring, and a backyard in dire need of landscaping. We knew it would take significant time, effort, and money to turn into a home that was comfortable and safe for our family. Melissa, who works in construction and has some interior design experience, offered to help with the renovations. I initially thought this was generous and assumed it would save us money while allowing us to spend time together as a family. Over the next 10 months, Melissa became heavily involved in the renovation. She spent nearly every weekend and many weeknights helping with electrical work, plumbing, flooring, drywall, painting, and furniture selection. She also contributed financially on multiple occasions, purchasing materials or tools essential for the work. Her help undoubtedly saved us tens of thousands of dollars and shortened the renovation timeline significantly. I was genuinely appreciative of her contributions and thought it strengthened our relationship. Once the renovations were complete, our house looked incredible. That's when Melissa began suggesting that she should move in permanently. She argued that because she had invested so much time, energy, and some money, she earned the right to live in the house. She framed it as mutually beneficial. She would have a comfortable home without paying rent, and Dan and I would continue benefiting from her skills and ability to help maintain the property. I explained that while we deeply appreciated her help, our home is our private space, and we were not comfortable with her living there full-time. I suggested compromises, such as weekend visits, temporary stays, or helping with specific projects, but she dismissed all these options. Melissa insisted that anything less than permanent residency was unfair and accused me of being selfish and ungrateful. The situation worsened when she started involving other family members. She presented the story as me refusing to acknowledge her contributions and cast herself as the wrong party. Our parents encouraged us to consider her sacrifices and allow her to move in. Some of Dan's siblings also sided with her, claiming that since she helped build the house, she had a moral claim to live there. I tried to explain that gratitude does not equate to ownership or residency, but they refused to accept my perspective. Melissa also began showing up unannounced, claiming she needed to check on the house or fix minor issues. She criticized furniture placement, paint colors, organization, and other small details, implying that the house wasn't being cared for properly without her input. I attempted to set clear boundaries, explaining that while her advice is appreciated, final decisions about the house are ours. She dismissed my boundaries and framed me as controlling and unreasonable. Dan supports my position, but even he is frustrated by the constant tension. He agrees that allowing Melissa to live with us permanently would disrupt our privacy and household routine, but he is also concerned about the ongoing family drama. The conflict has caused significant stress in our home and has made family gatherings awkward and uncomfortable. I have tried multiple compromises. I offered for Melissa to stay for limited visits, contribute to household bills if she stayed temporarily, or help financially with smaller projects, but she refuses any solution that doesn't involve full-time residency. She argues that her contributions entitle her to permanent residency and warns that if we refuse, our relationship will be permanently damaged. This situation has also started affecting our children. Melissa occasionally takes their side, suggesting that they should support family and implying that she should live with us, which creates confusion and tension at home. Dan and I have spent considerable time explaining boundaries and reasoning, but her persistence continues to create friction and tension in our household. I have also considered alternative solutions, like helping her find a rental nearby or assisting her with purchasing her own home, but she refuses anything that doesn't involve moving in with us. She argues that her work on the renovations gives her moral entitlement to live in the house, and that anything else would be insufficient recognition of her efforts. Despite repeated attempts to communicate respectfully, establish boundaries, and offer compromises, Melissa continues to pressure me, involve other family members, and frame the situation as a moral failing on my part. I feel trapped between maintaining my household, protecting my privacy, and preserving family relationships. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law live in our house permanently after she helped renovate it. Even though she claims she earned that right, I feel like I'm trying to protect my home, my marriage, and my children's environment, but she and other family members portray me as selfish and ungrateful. I am struggling to determine whether I am truly in the wrong. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to financially support my brother's wedding after he repeatedly asked for tens of thousands of dollars. I, 35F, have a younger brother, Mark, 30M, who has always been ambitious but extremely irresponsible with money. Growing up, our parents instilled in us the value of helping family, but Mark has consistently relied on others to cover his mistakes. He has a history of quitting jobs impulsively, overspending, and borrowing money without paying it back. I've helped him on small things before, like paying for emergencies or giving advice, but I've always maintained boundaries because I knew he expected people to fund his lifestyle. Last year, Mark got engaged to Sophie, 28F, and immediately began planning what he called his dream wedding. From the start, it was extravagant. A luxury venue, designer decorations, a massive guest list, and a honeymoon that would cost more than most people's annual salary. I was excited for him at first, but I quickly realized he had no savings and little financial stability. I assumed our parents would cover most of the costs, and I thought my involvement would be limited to small tasks, like helping pick decorations or addressing invitations. Within a month, Mark approached me about money. Initially, it was small requests, $500 for deposits here, $1,000 for extra catering there, but the requests escalated quickly. Eventually, he asked me to contribute $15,000 to cover part of the venue, catering, and honeymoon. He told me that since I had a stable career and savings, it was my moral obligation to help make his wedding happen. I was shocked. I explained that I could not provide that amount without jeopardizing my financial stability. I also reminded him that this was his wedding, not mine, and that he needed to plan within his means. Mark did not take it well. He became emotional, claiming I didn't care about him or his happiness. He accused me of being selfish, telling me that if I didn't contribute, he would make sure everyone knew I was refusing to support family. He framed it as a duty, not a favor, and said I was morally failing him. I tried reasoning with him, explaining I could help in non-financial ways, helping with planning logistics, DIY decorations, coordinating friends and family for tasks, and organizing pre-wedding events. He refused every offer, insisting that only money could fix the problem. Soon, Mark involved our parents. He told them I was refusing to help and framed it as a personal slight. Our parents expressed disappointment and said I should put family first and help him celebrate this milestone. I calmly explained that I was willing to support him in other ways, but giving tens of thousands of dollars was unreasonable and beyond my means. Some family members agreed with me, but others pressured me, emphasizing that family obligations come before practicality. Mark also began contacting mutual friends, sending long texts daily, guilt-tripping me, and implying that our relationship would suffer permanently if I didn't comply. Some friends even questioned me in person about why I wasn't helping financially, adding social pressure. I explained my position repeatedly. I was drawing a boundary to protect my financial health, while still offering other meaningful forms of support. A few weeks ago, Mark told me that if I didn't give the full $15,000, I wouldn't be part of the wedding party, the rehearsal dinner, or other pre-wedding events. He said I could attend the wedding as a guest, but would have no meaningful role. I was hurt because I've always been close to him and wanted to participate fully, but I could not compromise my financial stability. I offered alternatives, like covering minor expenses such as flowers or contributing to a group gift, but he refused, saying it wasn't enough. I have reflected a lot on this situation. I genuinely want my brother to have a beautiful wedding, and I want to maintain our relationship, but giving him this money would enable his pattern of dependency and likely create resentment later. I feel guilty because he is upset, and some family members view me as unsupportive, but I also feel justified. Compromising on this scale would be irresponsible and unfair to me. I have consulted close friends and a financial advisor, and they agree that my boundaries are reasonable. I made it clear I will help in non-financial ways, including planning assistance, hands-on support during the wedding, and coordinating friends and family. But Mark refuses anything that doesn't involve a large cash contribution. The stress has affected my mental health, and I worry about ongoing family tension, but I also feel justified in protecting myself. AITA for refusing to give my brother $15,000 to fund his lavish wedding. Even though he claims my financial support is essential for his happiness and frames my refusal as selfish, AITA for confronting my brother about his manipulative behavior at our family reunion. So I, 28F, have a brother, Jason, 31, who has always been a little controlling, but I didn't fully realize how bad it was until recently. Our family has always been close, or at least that's what I thought. My parents are kind, loving people who try to mediate any issues, but Jason has a knack for twisting situations to make himself look like the victim. Over the years, I've tried to avoid conflicts with him, thinking that keeping peace was easier, but at the last family reunion, everything came to a head. The reunion was at my parents' house, and our extended family was there, around 20 people, so it was a big event. Jason arrived a few hours after most of us, and immediately started taking control of everything, directing who should sit where, commenting on the food, and subtly undermining my parents' authority. At first, I brushed it off as him being his usual self, but then things escalated. I have a cousin, Emily, 26F, who has a new job she's really proud of, and she was excited to share her news with the family. Jason, instead of congratulating her, began asking her pointed questions that made her uncomfortable, like how she got the job, whether she thought she was qualified, and implying that she probably only got it because of networking. Emily looked embarrassed, and several people tried to redirect the conversation, but Jason continued, laughing and making these comments into jokes. I finally spoke up, telling him that his questions were inappropriate and that Emily had every right to be proud of her achievements. Jason smirked and said I was overreacting and that he was just joking. My parents intervened lightly, trying to calm both of us down, and the conversation shifted. Later, during dinner, Jason began criticizing the way my mom cooked certain dishes, saying they weren't seasoned properly or that the recipes were outdated. Everyone tried to ignore him, but it was clear that it was bothering my mom. I asked him to stop, politely at first, reminding him that my mom worked hard to prepare the meal for all of us. Jason laughed again, saying I was being too sensitive. This pattern continued throughout the evening. Anyone who tried to enjoy themselves or share good news was met with snide remarks or subtle jabs. Finally, my patience snapped. After dessert, when most of the family was relaxing in the living room, I confronted Jason directly. I told him that his behavior was manipulative, controlling, and toxic. I listed several instances from the evening where he had belittled others or undermined my parents. I told him that it wasn't acceptable and that he needed to take responsibility for his actions instead of making everyone else feel bad. Jason responded by yelling at me, calling me dramatic, and saying I was ruining the family reunion. He accused me of trying to control him, just like he allegedly controls others, and stormed out of the house. Some family members followed him outside, tried to mediate, but he refused to come back in. The aftermath has been complicated. Some relatives thanked me privately, saying that they had been uncomfortable with his behavior for years, but didn't feel like they could say anything. Others think I overreacted and made the situation worse. My parents are caught in the middle, They agree with me that Jason was being difficult, but they also feel guilty that their son left upset and that the family atmosphere was ruined. Jason has been texting me since, accusing me of attacking him and claiming I humiliated him in front of everyone. He says I'm exaggerating his actions and that I should apologize for how I spoke to him. I haven't responded yet because I genuinely don't feel like I did anything wrong. I was standing up for my cousin, my parents, and the rest of the family who were uncomfortable with his behavior. I know that family relationships are complicated, but I feel like my brother crossed a line multiple times, and I needed to call it out. Part of me wonders if I should have handled it differently, maybe privately, away from everyone else. But at the same time, I felt that doing it publicly was necessary because the harm was happening in front of everyone, and if I didn't address it, it would just continue. Some of my friends have told me that confronting Jason publicly was bold and necessary, while others suggest that I should have taken a softer approach to avoid family drama. I don't want to escalate things further, but I also don't want to let manipulative behavior slide because it's family. So, Reddit AITA for confronting my brother about his toxic behavior at our family reunion. I feel like I stood up for what was right, but I also recognize that family dynamics are delicate, and my confrontation did cause a scene. Was I justified in calling him out, or should I have handled it differently? AITA for confronting my brother about his parenting choices at his wedding. I, 32F, have always had a somewhat complicated relationship with my family, but I've tried to stay as supportive as possible. My younger brother, Mark, 29M, recently got married to his fiancée, Laura, 27F, and the wedding was last weekend. I thought it would be a happy occasion to see everyone together, enjoy a celebration, and reconnect. I had no idea it would turn into a dramatic confrontation. To give some background, Mark and Laura have a 4-year-old daughter, Emily. Over the years, I've noticed a few things about how they handle parenting that have made me uncomfortable. They're incredibly strict with Emily, enforcing rules that seem overly rigid for a child her age. For example, she isn't allowed to watch cartoons on weekdays, can't have any sweets, and has an incredibly strict bedtime, even on weekends. They also discipline her harshly in public. I've seen Mark raise his voice to her in front of other family members, and Laura has a tendency to make her sit quietly at the table during dinner as punishment, sometimes for minor mistakes. I understand that everyone has their own parenting style, and I never wanted to interfere until this wedding. The wedding was held at a beautiful outdoor venue. Most of the ceremony went smoothly, and Emily was behaving as well as a 4-year-old could. However, during the reception, things started to go south. Emily spilled a little bit of punch on the floor while walking with her cup. Mark immediately grabbed her hand, scolding her loudly in front of about 100 guests, and demanded she stand in the corner until she stopped crying. Laura followed him and started lecturing Emily about being careful and responsible, while the little girl sobbed. Other kids were playing around, and it felt like a very public shaming moment. I couldn't stay silent. I approached Mark calmly at first, tried to suggest they take Emily somewhere quiet instead of yelling at her in front of everyone. I said something along the lines of, maybe she just needs a minute away from all the noise. It's a lot for a 4-year-old. Mark got defensive immediately. He said, she knows the rules, and she needs to learn responsibility. You don't have kids, so you don't understand. I tried to stay calm, telling him that I wasn't criticizing them as parents, but that public humiliation might not be the best approach. Laura joined in, agreeing with Mark and suggesting I mind my own business. At this point, I felt frustrated because Emily was clearly upset, and it seemed like no one was willing to think about her feelings. I said something I probably shouldn't have. This isn't teaching responsibility. This is terrifying for her. She's 4, not a grown adult. You're both scaring her. My voice was louder than I intended, and suddenly I had both parents staring at me, other family members looking concerned, and Emily hiding her face behind Laura's dress. Mark yelled at me to back off and accused me of being disrespectful at his wedding. Laura told me I had no right to comment on their parenting. Other guests began murmuring, and it became an awkward scene. At that moment, I realized the confrontation wasn't productive and excused myself from the table, feeling both anxious and guilty for making the wedding about this. I spent the rest of the night mostly avoiding Mark and Laura and trying to console Emily whenever possible. The next day, my mother called me. She said that while she agreed that Emily's reaction seemed extreme, I had embarrassed Mark and Laura in front of their friends and family. She said they were hurt and that I had overstepped boundaries. I tried to explain that I was thinking of Emily's emotional well-being and that my intent wasn't to ruin the wedding, but she said I should have spoken privately or waited until after the event. Since then, I've been getting messages from extended family. Some say they agree with me and are worried about Emily, while others think I was completely out of line. Mark hasn't spoken to me since the wedding, and Laura's attitude toward me has been frosty. I feel torn because part of me believes I was standing up for a child in a stressful moment, but another part wonders if I really cross a line by confronting them so publicly. I've thought a lot about how I could have handled it differently. Maybe I could have pulled them aside privately, or maybe I should have kept my mouth shut entirely. At the same time, seeing a child be visibly terrified in a room full of people felt wrong to ignore. I'm now worried that my actions may have caused a lasting rift with my brother and that I might be labeled the problem relative who can't respect family boundaries. So, Reddit AITA for confronting my brother and his wife about their parenting choices at their wedding, even though I was trying to protect their daughter from being humiliated in front of everyone. AITA for refusing to let my cousin move into my house permanently after she helped renovate it, even though she insists she deserves to stay. AITA here. I, 36F, have been dealing with a situation involving my cousin, Rachel, 34F, that has caused a lot of tension in my household and strained family relationships. I'm struggling to figure out if I'm really wrong or if she's being unreasonable. Some background. About 3 years ago, my husband, Mark, 38M, and I bought our first house. It was a fixer-upper with outdated plumbing, an old kitchen, damaged flooring, and a backyard that was essentially unusable. We knew it would take significant work, money, and time to turn it into a comfortable, long-term home for our family. Rachel, who has experience in construction and some interior design, offered to help with the renovations. I initially thought it was generous and a great way to save money while spending time together as family. Over the next year, Rachel became heavily involved in the renovation. She spent nearly every weekend and several evenings working on plumbing, electrical work, drywall, flooring, painting, and furniture selection. She also contributed financially at times, buying materials or tools that were essential to completing the work. Without her help, we would have had to hire professionals for many of these tasks, which would have cost tens of thousands more. I was genuinely appreciative of her contributions and thought our collaboration strengthened our relationship. Once the renovations were completed, our house looked incredible. That's when Rachel began suggesting she should move in permanently. She argued that because she had invested so much time, energy, and some money into the renovations, she earned the right to live there. She framed it as mutually beneficial. She would have a comfortable home without paying rent, and Mark and I would continue benefiting from her skills and ability to help maintain the property. I explained that while we appreciated her help, our home is our private space, and we were not comfortable with her living there full-time. I suggested compromises, such as weekend visits, temporary stays, or helping with specific projects, but she dismissed all of these options. Rachel insisted that anything less than permanent residency was unfair and accused me of being selfish and ungrateful. The situation escalated when she began involving other family members. She presented the story as me refusing to acknowledge her contributions and cast herself as the wrong party. Our parents encouraged us to consider her sacrifices and allow her to move in. Some of my siblings also sided with her, claiming that since she helped build the house, she had a moral claim to live there. I tried to explain that gratitude does not equate to ownership or residency, but they refused to see my perspective. Rachel also began showing up unannounced, claiming she needed to check on the house or fix minor problems. She criticized furniture placement, paint colors, organization, and other small details, implying the house wasn't being cared for properly without her input. I attempted to set boundaries, explaining that while her advice is appreciated, final decisions about the house are ours. She dismissed my boundaries and framed me as controlling and unreasonable. Mark supports my position, but even he is frustrated by the constant tension. He agrees that allowing Rachel to live with us permanently would disrupt our privacy and household routine, but he is also concerned about the ongoing family drama. The conflict has created significant stress in our household and has made family gatherings awkward and uncomfortable. I have attempted multiple compromises. I offered for Rachel to stay for limited visits, contribute to household bills if she stayed temporarily, or help financially with smaller projects, but she refuses any solution that doesn't involve full-time residency. She insists that her contributions entitle her to permanent residency and warns that if we refuse, our relationship will be permanently damaged. This tension has also started affecting our children. Rachel occasionally takes their side, suggesting that they should support family and implying that she should live with us, which creates confusion and tension at home. Mark and I have spent hours explaining boundaries and reasoning, but her persistence continues to create friction. I have also considered alternative solutions, like helping her find a rental nearby or assisting her with purchasing her own home, but she refuses anything that doesn't involve moving in with us. She argues that her work on the renovations gives her moral entitlement to live in the house, and that anything else would be insufficient recognition of her efforts. Despite repeated attempts to communicate respectfully, establish boundaries, and offer compromises, Rachel continues to pressure me, involve other family members, and frame the situation as a moral failing on my part. I feel trapped between maintaining my household, protecting my privacy, and preserving family relationships. So, AITA for refusing to let my cousin live in our house permanently after she helped renovate it. Even though she claims she earned that right, I feel like I am trying to protect my home, my marriage, and my children's environment, but she and other family members portray me as selfish and ungrateful. I am struggling to determine whether I am really in the wrong. AITA for refusing to let my partner's mother move in with us permanently, even though she says she has nowhere else to go. I, 30F, have been with my partner, Jason, 32M, for 5 years. We recently bought a house together, a 3-bedroom place that we designed to be our own space. Everything was going well until Jason's mother, Patricia, 58F, lost her apartment due to financial mismanagement. She called Jason in a panic, claiming she had nowhere to live and needed to move in temporarily while she figured things out. Jason initially suggested we let her stay for a short period, maybe 2 weeks, and I agreed, thinking it would be manageable. At first, Patricia was quiet and polite. She helped occasionally with chores, cooked meals a few times, and generally seemed to respect our space. But after a week, she started leaving dishes in the sink, piling laundry in common areas, and inviting friends over without asking. When I reminded her of the house rules, she brushed it off, saying she was stressed and needed freedom. Jason tried to mediate, but it was clear that her behavior was beginning to infringe on my comfort and the home we had worked hard to establish. 2 weeks in, Patricia suggested that she might need to stay longer because finding an affordable apartment was taking longer than she expected. I explained that our home was not a permanent solution and that she needed to find another place. She accused me of being selfish and uncaring and said that a daughter-in-law should be more accommodating. Jason seemed torn because he didn't want to upset his mother, but he also understood my perspective. Over the next month, the situation worsened. Patricia began asking us to cover groceries, utilities, and other expenses, even though she had her own savings. I explained firmly that I could not pay for her indefinitely and that she needed to take responsibility for herself. She refused to consider alternatives such as short-term rentals, staying with other family members, or helping her find roommates. Instead, she insisted that only living with us permanently would work and repeatedly said we were being cold and heartless. She also started rearranging furniture, criticizing how we ran our household, and suggesting we change our home to accommodate her more comfortably. I found this invasive and disrespectful. When I confronted her, she told me I didn't care about family and that Jason should listen to his mother. She even threatened that if we refused to let her stay permanently, she might stop seeing Jason or cut off contact entirely. Jason and I tried to establish boundaries. We agreed that Patricia could stay temporarily, but that she needed to respect our rules, contribute to the household, and actively work on finding another place. Patricia rejected these boundaries, claiming that she had a right to our home as her son's family. She began sending Jason guilt-laden messages, claiming he was abandoning her and that I was manipulating him. The emotional pressure was intense and exhausting. Family dynamics became complicated. Some relatives agreed with us, saying it was reasonable to allow temporary assistance but not permanent cohabitation. Others sided with Patricia, arguing that family should always come first and framing my refusal as selfish. Friends who visited our home noticed the tension and advised us to maintain our boundaries to avoid resentment and conflict. I offered multiple practical solutions to help Patricia without compromising our home or stability. I helped her research affordable apartments, connected her with rental assistance programs, suggested temporary short-term rentals, and offered to co-sign if she could demonstrate financial responsibility. She rejected every option, insisting that only moving in with us would solve her problems. She framed our refusal as a moral failure and accused Jason and me of prioritizing comfort over family. The situation has caused stress, anxiety, and tension between Jason and me. He supports my position privately but struggles with guilt over upsetting his mother. I have reflected extensively and still feel that standing firm is necessary for my well-being and for the long-term health of our relationship. Allowing Patricia to stay permanently would likely create ongoing tension, disrupt our privacy, and negatively affect our mental health. AITA for refusing to let my partner's mother live with us permanently, even though she claims she has nowhere else to go and insists that our refusal is selfish and cruel. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she deliberately excluded me from her bridal party. I, 29F, have always had a somewhat complicated relationship with my older sister, Emily, 33F. Growing up, she was the golden child, smart, outgoing, and seemingly flawless. I, on the other hand, was quiet, introverted, and often overshadowed. Despite this, we shared a bond that was mostly positive, though there were moments of tension, especially during our teenage years when jealousy and misunderstandings were common. Over the past decade, we've drifted slightly apart, largely due to distance and busy careers, but I thought our relationship had stabilized. Emily got engaged about a year ago to her fiancé, David, 34M, and I was genuinely happy for her. When she started talking about the wedding, she mentioned the bridal party. I assumed, naively perhaps, that I would be included. I have always been close to her emotionally, and while I didn't have many friends who were really close to her, I thought my sisterly bond would guarantee me a spot. So when she sent out the official invites for bridesmaids and groomsmen, and I wasn't on the list, I was shocked. I confronted her gently, assuming it must have been an oversight. Her response still stings. She said she had limited spots and wanted only friends I grew up with in the bridal party. She added that she didn't want family members to feel awkward because her friend were older and she didn't want anyone feeling out of place. I tried to express that I wouldn't feel awkward and that it hurt to be excluded, but she brushed it off, saying it was her day and she needed to make her own choices. At first, I tried to rationalize it. I reminded myself that weddings are stressful, and perhaps she wasn't thinking about my feelings. But as the months went by, it became apparent that she actively included other people whom she barely knew, inviting childhood friends she hadn't spoken to in years, but still didn't want me in the bridal party. That's when I started feeling genuinely hurt and excluded. My parents suggested that maybe I could take a supporting role, ushering, reading a passage, helping with decorations. But Emily's tone implied that even that felt like a consolation prize, as if it would make me feel included without actually giving me a meaningful role. As the wedding drew closer, I decided to ask her if I could at least help with planning or attend pre-wedding events like the dress fittings or the bachelorette party. Her response was curt. She had already planned the bachelorette with her friends, and the dress fittings were too personal. I felt invisible. My parents urged me to just attend and be happy for her, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being deliberately excluded. It seemed less about practical limits and more about a personal choice to leave me out. I try to maintain some level of civility, sending congratulations and messages about her upcoming bridal shower, but I stopped actively participating in any wedding-related communication after she told me not to come to the dress fittings. 2 weeks ago, Emily asked me if I would be attending the wedding. That's when I made a decision. I told her that I wouldn't be attending. I explained that I couldn't celebrate an event that made me feel unwelcome and excluded, and that her choices had caused me a lot of emotional pain. I didn't phrase it in a dramatic way. I simply said that attending would be impossible for me under the circumstances. She was furious. She accused me of being dramatic, selfish, and trying to ruin her day. She claimed that I was exaggerating and that my presence would have been noticed by her friends as a negative vibe. She also told my parents that I had chosen to be the villain in our relationship. My parents are divided. My mother feels I should put aside my hurt and attend, saying that weddings are about family and that Emily would regret my absence. My father is more sympathetic, saying that Emily's choice to exclude me was unnecessary and cruel, and that my feelings are valid. Some of my friends think I overreacted and that a wedding is not the time to air grievances, while others support my decision, saying that attending would have validated a hurtful choice. Since then, Emily has barely spoken to me. She has posted wedding updates on social media, clearly aware I'm seeing them, but with no intention of including me. She has also accused me to mutual friends of being petty and holding grudges, which has made me reconsider the possibility that our relationship might be permanently damaged. I'm torn between feeling justified for standing up for myself and guilty for possibly causing a rift. I genuinely miss my sister and wish things could have been different, but I also can't shake the feeling that being present would have sent the message that her exclusion was acceptable. I've debated sending her a letter expressing my feelings one last time, explaining why I made this decision and hoping to reconcile in the future. However, I worry that doing so might come across as manipulative or guilt-inducing, which is not my intention. I also wonder if I should simply let the wedding pass and attempt to rebuild our relationship afterward, though it feels like a long road. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because she deliberately excluded me from her bridal party and other key pre-wedding events. I feel like my decision was about self-respect and emotional boundaries, but I also fear that I might be seen as overreacting or selfish. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé plan our family vacation. I, 32F, have always been the organized sibling in my family. My younger sister, Emily, 28F, is spontaneous and free-spirited, which usually works well for her, but not for me. Our family is close-knit, and for the past few years, we've made it a tradition to go on a big vacation together every summer. These trips are not just a way to unwind. They're practically sacred in our family calendar, and each of us usually has a say in planning, but I tend to coordinate most of the details because I like structure and nobody else seems to have the same level of patience. This year, Emily got engaged to her fiancé, Matt, 30M. Matt is a great guy, friendly, outgoing, and very persuasive, but he's also extremely controlling when it comes to planning things. Emily, usually independent, seemed very happy to let him take the reins for everything in their lives, including decisions that involve our entire family. A few months ago, Emily announced that she and Matt wanted to take over this year's family vacation planning. She said they had a surprise destination in mind and wanted it to be a new adventure for all of us. At first, I was hesitant but tried to be accommodating. I thought maybe they could plan part of the trip and I could handle logistics like flights, accommodations, and schedules. But soon, it became clear that Matt wanted full control. He insisted that he knew best for the family and started sending out a long list of questions and forms about everyone's preferences, dietary restrictions, and activity levels. He then made it clear that if anyone didn't like the plan, they were free to skip the trip. I got uneasy when I saw the proposed itinerary. It included extremely strenuous activities every single day, hiking several miles, early morning yoga classes, surfing lessons, and a strict schedule for sightseeing. He didn't leave any free time for rest or personal choice. My parents are in their 60s, and my younger brother, 25M, has a bad knee. I immediately raised concerns, but Matt dismissed them, saying the trip was meant to challenge us and that everyone should embrace the adventure. When I voiced that a vacation shouldn't feel like a boot camp and that flexibility was important, Matt said he had already made bookings and that the plan was final. I tried to compromise by suggesting minor adjustments like adding a rest day, optional activities, or considering everyone's physical limitations. Emily supported me privately, but said she didn't want to upset Matt or ruin his excitement about planning. I began to feel like I was being steamrolled, but I didn't want to create tension before the trip. 2 weeks before departure, I finally said I couldn't participate if Matt was in charge. I explained to my family that while I loved Emily and respected Matt, I didn't want to spend a week feeling stressed, rushed, and guilty if I couldn't keep up with the demanding schedule. I offered to organize a separate vacation for just the family members who wanted a more relaxed trip, but I wouldn't compromise my well-being to follow someone else's rigid plan. This created a huge argument within the family. Matt accused me of being controlling and selfish, saying I always have to have things my way. Emily was torn. She wanted me there, but didn't want to upset Matt, so she stayed mostly silent during the argument. My parents were disappointed, saying I was overreacting and that I should just go along with it for Emily's sake. My brother sided with me quietly, saying he didn't want to be dragged into a physically exhausting week either. Matt then posted a group message to the extended family, saying I was choosing not to embrace family bonding and implying that I was trying to undermine his authority. I felt blindsided because I had tried to explain my perspective calmly and reasonably. I also felt upset that Emily, whom I've always been close to, didn't fully defend me. I tried talking to her privately, and she admitted she was afraid of confrontation and didn't want to fight with Matt before the wedding. In the end, I decided to organize a smaller, more relaxed trip for just my parents, brother, and me. We rented a cabin in a national park and spent a week hiking at our own pace, cooking meals together, and relaxing. It was incredibly rejuvenating, but I can't shake the guilt. Emily attended the trip with Matt, and from the photos and updates they shared, it seems like everyone had fun, but I also heard that several family members were exhausted and a little frustrated by Matt's strict schedule. Since then, there's been tension. Matt occasionally posts indirect comments on social media implying that I ruined the family vibe, and my parents keep hinting that I should learn to compromise for the sake of the family. Emily apologizes, but also seems caught between supporting me and keeping peace with Matt. I know that my choice was about preserving my own boundaries and avoiding stress, but I can't tell if I overreacted by refusing to participate in the trip. I love my family and want to be included in these vacations, but I also don't want to be part of a situation that feels exhausting and controlling. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé plan our family vacation. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what could be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to let my sister move in with me permanently, even though she says she has nowhere else to go. I, 34F, have a younger sister, Rachel, 28F, who has always struggled with stability. She's had a string of short-term jobs, frequently moved between apartments, and often relied on friends and family for support. I've helped her in the past, letting her stay for short periods during emergencies and occasionally lending small amounts of money, but I've always set boundaries because I know she has a pattern of becoming dependent. About 3 months ago, Rachel called me in a panic. She had been evicted from her apartment because she couldn't pay rent and claimed she had nowhere else to live. She asked if she could move in temporarily while she figured things out. I agreed, thinking a week or 2 would be sufficient for her to get back on her feet. At first, everything went smoothly. She was polite, kept her things organized, and helped with minor chores. I assumed the arrangement would remain manageable. After the first week, her behavior began to change. She started leaving dishes in the sink for days, piling laundry in common areas, and inviting friends over without asking. When I reminded her of my house rules, she dismissed my concerns, saying she was stressed and needed freedom. I tried to be patient, but her behavior started to interfere with my daily life and privacy. 2 weeks into her stay, Rachel suggested she might need to stay longer, saying that finding an affordable apartment was taking longer than expected. I explained that my home was not a permanent solution and that she needed to find another place soon. She became emotional, accusing me of being selfish and uncaring. She argued that I should allow her to stay because I had the means and she had nowhere else to go. Over the next month, her demands escalated. She began asking for money for groceries, utilities, and other expenses she had neglected. I told her repeatedly that I could not cover her costs and that she needed to be responsible for herself. She refused to consider alternatives such as short-term rentals, staying with other family members, or finding roommates. Instead, she insisted that only moving in with me permanently would work, and frequently said I was heartless for refusing. Rachel also began rearranging furniture, criticizing how I ran my household, and suggesting I change my home to accommodate her more comfortably. I found this invasive and frustrating. When I confronted her, she claimed I didn't care about family and that I was controlling. She even threatened that if I didn't let her stay indefinitely, she would stop contacting me and might cut off ties entirely. I tried to establish firm boundaries. I told her she could stay temporarily, but she needed to respect our rules, contribute to household chores, and actively work on finding another place. Rachel rejected these boundaries, saying she had a right to live in my home because we were family. She began sending constant messages to me and to other family members, framing my refusal as selfish and cruel. She claimed I was abandoning her during a difficult time. Family dynamics became tense. Some relatives agreed with me, saying it was reasonable to allow temporary assistance, but not permanent cohabitation. Others sided with Rachel, saying family should always come first and framing my refusal as unkind. Friends who visited my home noticed the tension and advised me to maintain my boundaries to avoid resentment and long-term conflict. I offered practical alternatives to help Rachel without compromising my home or well-being. I helped her research affordable apartments, connected her with rental assistance programs, suggested temporary short-term rentals, and offered to co-sign if she could demonstrate financial responsibility. She refused all of these options, insisting that only living with me permanently would solve her problems. She framed my refusal as a moral failure and accused me of putting my comfort over family. This situation has caused a lot of stress, anxiety, and tension. I want to support Rachel and maintain our relationship, but I cannot sacrifice my home, privacy, or mental health. Allowing her to stay permanently would likely create ongoing tension and resentment. I have tried to communicate calmly, empathize with her situation, and offer practical solutions, but she refuses anything short of permanent residency. I feel guilty because she is upset, and some family members view me as unsupportive, but I also feel justified because compromising would not solve her underlying problems and would harm me. AITA for refusing to let my sister live in my house indefinitely, even though she claims she has nowhere else to go and insists my refusal is selfish and cruel. AITA for ruining my sister's wedding because I refuse to lie. I, 28F, have always had a complicated relationship with my older sister, Jenna, 32F. Growing up, she was the golden child, top of her class, popular, seemingly perfect in every way, and I was the quiet, awkward one who never quite fit in. Our parents treated her differently, which naturally caused tension between us. Despite all that, I've always loved her, and I thought I was finally getting along with her as adults. A few months ago, Jenna got engaged to Mark, 34M, a guy I actually like. I've always wanted my sister to be happy, so when she asked me to be a bridesmaid, I immediately said yes. I was genuinely excited and tried to make everything about the wedding as stress-free for her as possible. I agreed to helping with dress shopping, planning the bachelorette party, and even offered to DIY some decorations. I was genuinely trying to be supportive. However, things started to go sideways when she asked me to do something that I immediately knew I couldn't do. About 6 weeks before the wedding, she came to me, crying, and said, "I need you to lie for me at the wedding." I froze because I had no idea what she was talking about. She explained that Mark's aunt, Susan, was going to confront Jenna about a past incident involving Jenna's high school boyfriend. Apparently, Susan still held a grudge because Jenna had dumped her nephew in a harsh way, and she loved to gossip. Jenna said she didn't want anyone to know about it, especially Mark's family, and she wanted me to deny it if Susan brought it up. I told her I couldn't lie. I know it's a small thing in the grand scheme of life, but lying makes me extremely uncomfortable, especially in front of a large group of people. I explained that it would be humiliating for me to deny something publicly, and it would go against my personal values. I suggested other ways to handle it, like steering the conversation away, leaving the room, or having someone else subtly intervene. She got upset, saying I was letting her down and that this was her wedding, not my morals. Over the next few weeks, the tension between us grew. She started texting me passive-aggressive messages about how unhelpful I was being, and at one point she said, "I hope you realize what kind of sister you're being." I tried to brush it off and continued helping with the wedding, but I was starting to dread it. Fast forward to the wedding day. Everything went beautifully up until the reception. Susan cornered me near the bar and, with a sly smile, asked about Jenna's old high school boyfriend. I felt my heart race. I knew Jenna was watching from across the room, expecting me to lie. I paused and decided to tell the truth politely, but in a way that wasn't hurtful or humiliating. Yes, they dated, but it was a long time ago, and everyone's moved on. I thought that was a fair answer. It didn't insult Susan, didn't shame Jenna, and didn't fabricate anything. Jenna stormed over immediately after and yelled at me in front of the guests. She accused me of ruining the wedding, embarrassing her, and betraying her trust. Mark tried to calm her down, and some of the relatives looked uncomfortable, but I stood my ground. I said I wasn't going to lie, and if she wanted people to believe something untrue, she would have to handle it herself. Afterward, the rest of the reception was awkward. Jenna barely spoke to me. Mark seemed disappointed, and Susan seemed smug. By the end of the night, Jenna sent me a long text saying that I had ruined the happiest day of her life, and that she didn't know if she could forgive me. My parents called me, upset, saying that I should have just told a little white lie to keep the peace. I feel horrible because I never intended to ruin her wedding, but I also feel like I have the right to stand by my principles. I try to be as diplomatic as possible without lying outright, but apparently that wasn't enough. I've spent the past few days avoiding family calls and social media because I don't know how to face anyone. I also feel guilty because my actions have caused tension between me and Mark, who seemed genuinely nice and supportive. I don't want to lose my sister over this, but I also can't compromise my morals for one day, even if it is her wedding. So, AITA for refusing to lie at my sister's wedding and, in her view, ruining it. AITA for confronting my sister about her wedding guest list and causing a family rift. I, 32F, have always been close to my younger sister, Emma, 29F. Growing up, we shared everything from clothes to secrets, and even as adults, we maintained a strong bond. Emma got engaged last year to her fiancé, Mark, 31M, and I was genuinely excited for her. When she announced the wedding date, she also mentioned that it would be a relatively small ceremony, limited to close family and friends. I thought that was reasonable, given the challenges of organizing a wedding during busy schedules and travel restrictions that still linger in some places. Everything seemed fine until she started sending out preliminary guest inquiries via text, asking people if they were definitely coming. That's when I noticed a pattern that I couldn't ignore. Emma's list included Mark's extended family, old co-workers, and even friends she had barely seen in years, while my own circle, which includes a few lifelong friends, wasn't considered. At first, I brushed it off as oversight, thinking she would include my friends later, but as time went on, it became clear that she wasn't planning to. I decided to approach her privately, hoping to handle it delicately. I told her I understood that it was her day, but I felt hurt that my friends, people who have been like family to me, weren't being considered. I explained that weddings are not just about the couple, but also about celebrating with the people who shaped your life. Emma listened but said, "I'm sorry you feel that way, but Mark's family is very important to me, and we have to keep the list small. It's nothing personal." I tried to argue gently. pointing out that a balance could be struck, but she seemed resolute. I didn't push it at that moment, but a few weeks later, I overheard Emma talking to Mark about finalizing the list. She casually mentioned that my friends probably wouldn't fit in any way, which stung because she knew my group is small, but extremely close. Something inside me snapped. I drafted a message, longer than I ever intended, trying to convey my feelings without being confrontational. I expressed that it felt like she was prioritizing people she barely knew over people who had been there for her all along. I also mentioned that it hurt to see Mark's friends and family prioritized when some of them were barely in her life before the engagement. I sent the message late one evening, hoping she would understand my perspective. I didn't expect the response I got. Emma replied angrily, accusing me of trying to control her wedding and guilt-tripping her about her choices. She said I was being selfish and reminded me that the wedding was ultimately about her and Mark, not me. I tried to clarify that I wasn't trying to control anything, just expressing hurt feelings, but she blocked my number for a few days. My parents called me to ask what happened. When I explained, they were torn. They said they understood that I was hurt, but also noted that weddings are stressful and that Emma and Mark had the right to choose their guests. My father tried to mediate, saying, "You're allowed to be upset, but sometimes you have to let people make decisions, even if you disagree." I agreed, but still felt frustrated and sad. A week later, Emma unblocked me and sent a long message explaining that she and Mark had to make some tough decisions. She said that including everyone they wanted would have meant over 200 guests, which they couldn't afford or accommodate. She also mentioned that she was worried my friends might not get along with Mark's family and that she didn't want unnecessary drama. I understand that point of view, but part of me felt like she was justifying the exclusion rather than acknowledging my feelings. Since then, things have been tense. I've been cordial at family gatherings, but I haven't been as close to Emma as I used to be. My friends were upset when I explained the situation, and some even questioned whether I should attend the wedding at all. I feel guilty because I don't want to ruin her day or cause more family tension, but I also feel hurt that my concerns weren't taken seriously. The most difficult part is that my parents have started asking me to let it go for the sake of family harmony, which makes me feel like I'm being told my feelings don't matter. I've considered apologizing to Emma for how I approached the situation, but I also worry that doing so might signal that my feelings were invalid. To complicate matters, my friends have subtly pressured me to skip the wedding in protest, which I haven't decided on. I don't want to cause a scene, but I also don't want to feel like I'm betraying them or ignoring my own emotions. I keep replaying the message I sent and her response, wondering if I crossed a line or if I was justified in confronting her. So, AITA for confronting my sister about her guest list and causing a rift in our family? Should I have stayed silent even though I felt hurt, or was it reasonable to speak up about something that felt deeply personal? I'm still unsure how to repair the relationship without compromising my own feelings, and the wedding is only a few months away. AITA for refusing to let my fiancé's sister move in with us permanently, even though she says she has nowhere else to go. I, 31F, have been with my fiancé, Ryan, 33M, for 6 years. We recently bought a house together, a 3-bedroom townhouse in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Our plan was to make it our own space and eventually start a family. Everything was going smoothly until Ryan's younger sister, Lila, 28F, lost her apartment due to financial mismanagement. She called Ryan in a panic, claiming she had nowhere to live and needed to move in temporarily while she figured things out. Ryan suggested we let her stay for a short period, maybe 2 weeks, and I reluctantly agreed, thinking it would be manageable. At first, Lila was quiet and respectful. She helped with small chores, occasionally cooked meals, and didn't interfere with our routines. I assumed that the temporary arrangement would be fine, but within the first week, her behavior started to change. She began leaving dirty dishes in the sink for days, piling laundry in shared spaces, and inviting friends over without asking. When I reminded her politely about our house rules, she brushed it off, saying she was stressed and needed freedom. Ryan tried to mediate, but Lila started implying that her needs should take priority over ours. After the initial 2 weeks, Lila suggested that she might stay longer because finding an affordable apartment was taking longer than expected. I explained firmly that our home was not a permanent solution and that she needed to find another place soon. Lila reacted emotionally, accusing me of being selfish and uncaring. She told Ryan that a good sister-in-law would accommodate family in need, and that I was being unreasonable. Ryan seemed torn because he didn't want to upset his sister, but also recognized that our privacy and boundaries were being violated. Over the next month, Lila's behavior escalated. She began asking for money for groceries, utilities, and other expenses she had neglected. I explained repeatedly that I could not cover her costs, and that she needed to take responsibility for herself. She refused to consider any alternatives such as short-term rentals, staying with friends, or even seeking roommates. Instead, she insisted that only moving in with us permanently would work and frequently told Ryan that I was heartless for refusing. She also started taking over aspects of our home. She rearranged furniture without asking, criticized our decor, and commented on how I managed the household. She suggested that our home needed to be more comfortable for her and implied that our lives should revolve around her. While I confronted her about this, she accused me of being controlling and unsympathetic. She even threatened that if we didn't allow her to stay permanently, she would cut ties with Ryan entirely. Ryan and I tried to set clear boundaries. We explained that she could stay temporarily, but she needed to respect our house rules, contribute to the household, and actively search for a new place. Lila rejected these conditions, claiming that she had a right to live with her brother and that family should always come first. She began sending long, guilt-laden messages to both of us and even contacted other family members, framing our refusal as selfish and cruel. Some relatives sided with her, saying we should prioritize family above all else, while others agreed with us, recognizing that temporary support is reasonable but permanent cohabitation is not. I offered practical alternatives to help her without compromising our home or well-being. I helped her research affordable apartments, connected her with rental assistance programs, suggested temporary short-term rentals, and even offered to co-sign if she could demonstrate financial responsibility. She refused every option, insisting that only moving in with us permanently would solve her problems. She framed our refusal as a moral failing, telling Ryan that he should choose her needs over mine. The situation has caused significant stress and tension in our relationship. Ryan supports my position privately, but feels guilty about upsetting his sister. I feel exhausted, anxious, and guilty at times, but I also know that compromising would likely create long-term resentment and disrupt our privacy and mental health. Allowing Lila to stay permanently would likely damage our relationship and set a precedent we cannot sustain. I have tried repeatedly to communicate calmly, empathize with her situation, and offer practical solutions, but she refuses anything that doesn't involve permanent residency. I want to support her and maintain a positive family relationship, but I also need to protect my home, finances, and mental health. AITA for refusing to let my fiancé's sister live with us permanently, even though she claims she has nowhere else to go and insists that our refusal is selfish and cruel. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé move in before the wedding. So, this is going to be a bit of a long one, and honestly, I'm still trying to figure out if I'm overreacting or if I'm justified here. I, 28F, live with my partner, Sam, 30M, in a modest 2-bedroom apartment that we've been renting for about 3 years. We live a pretty normal life, work, gym, occasional social gatherings, but we also value our privacy and personal space. Sam and I have a really good dynamic, and we enjoy our home as our sanctuary. My sister, Lily, 26F, recently got engaged to her boyfriend, Derek, 27M. Lily and I have always been close, but our personalities are extremely different. She's spontaneous, impulsive, and very extroverted, while I'm more reserved and structured. Our differences have never been a problem before. We've managed to respect each other's boundaries and lifestyles. That is, until Derek came into the picture. About 2 months ago, Lily mentioned that Derek had been having trouble finding a permanent place to live because of his work schedule and financial situation. Apparently, he was bouncing between temporary sublets and his parents' house, which he described as chaotic and stressful. Lily suggested, rather half-jokingly at first, that he could stay with Sam and me temporarily until he got things sorted out. I laughed it off, thinking it was just a passing idea, but Lily kept bringing it up. Eventually, she started pushing the idea more seriously, saying it would help Derek save money for the wedding and that it would give him a taste of family life. She even said, "It'll only be for a couple of months, really. You won't even notice him." I have to admit, I felt my anxiety spike immediately. I'm not antisocial, but having another adult in our small apartment would drastically change our daily routines and privacy. Our apartment is literally designed for 2 people, and we barely have space for 2 people to move around comfortably, let alone a third. I told Lily that I didn't feel comfortable with the idea. I try to be gentle, saying things like, "I get that Derek needs a place, but our apartment just isn't set up for 3 adults. It would be really stressful for Sam and me." Lily responded with a classic, "But I thought family is supposed to help each other." She went on about how Derek doesn't have anyone else right now and how it would mean a lot to her if we said yes. I explained that I understood her concerns, but our home is not a communal space. It's our personal space, and having someone move in, even temporarily, would feel intrusive. Sam was on my side, but he added another dimension. Derek isn't the kind of person we've spent much time with outside of occasional group dinners. We barely know him well enough to live with him, and the thought of potentially clashing on daily habits, cleaning, cooking, bathroom schedules, was stressful. Sam also mentioned that Lily and Derek have very different standards of tidiness and organization compared to us, which could lead to tension. The situation escalated when Lily called me one evening in tears, insisting that Derek would feel abandoned and that I was being unreasonable. She even threatened, not overtly but subtly, that if I didn't help, she might have to reconsider inviting me to the wedding planning or other pre-wedding events. That really hit me because I had been supportive and involved in every step of her engagement so far. At that point, I decided to draw a hard boundary. I sent her a message saying, "I'm really sorry, but Derek cannot move in here. I love you and I want to support you, but our apartment is not equipped for a third adult. I hope you can understand that this is about maintaining our home and sanity, not about not caring for you or him." Lily's response was immediate and, frankly, harsh. She accused me of being selfish, unsupportive, and even cruel for turning away family in need. She went on to say that this decision makes me look cold and that she expected more from her sister. Derek himself didn't contact me directly, but I could feel the tension in our interactions whenever we were in group settings. Since then, Lily has been distant and curt with me. She still expects me to attend all pre-wedding events, but the atmosphere has changed. Family gatherings feel strained, and Sam and I are constantly worried that our refusal has created a permanent rift. Even mutual friends have started asking if we disagree with the engagement because of the tension. I understand Lily's perspective. Derek is in a tough spot financially, and she's probably feeling guilty or stressed about the logistics of their upcoming wedding. But from my side, having someone move in who I barely know, in a space that's already small, would cause real stress and potential conflict. I don't think it's unreasonable to want my home to remain a 2-person environment, especially since the arrangement would be temporary but with no guaranteed end date. I also offered alternatives, like helping Derek find a short-term rental, offering to help with moving costs, or even hosting him occasionally for dinners or weekend visits. But Lily seems to feel these solutions aren't sufficient. Now I'm stuck wondering, am I really the asshole here for prioritizing my own household and boundaries? Or is it unreasonable to refuse to house my future brother-in-law temporarily? I want to maintain my relationship with my sister, but I also can't ignore the stress and disruption this would bring into my life and my relationship with Sam. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé move in before their wedding. AITA for refusing to let my younger brother stay at my house after a huge fight with my parents. I, 32M, live in a small city on the East Coast and have been working as a software engineer for the past 10 years. I've been living alone in a 2-bedroom apartment for about 5 years now. My younger brother, Ethan, 28M, Recently moved to the same city for a new job, and for the first few months, stayed in a cheap studio apartment downtown. Ethan and I have always had a complicated relationship. We grew up with our parents, my mom and dad, who had a very strict approach to discipline and were particularly harsh with Ethan. I was the golden child, always praised for grades, sports, and leadership qualities, while Ethan struggled academically and socially, so he often bore the brunt of their criticism. Naturally, this created tension between us, and although I care about him, there's always been an undercurrent of resentment on both sides. Things escalated about a month ago. Ethan's apartment lease ended, and he asked if he could stay with me temporarily while he looked for a new place. I agreed, thinking it would be a week or two tops. I should note that my apartment is fairly small, and while I don't mind visitors, having someone living there full-time is a significant adjustment. Ethan, however, did not respect boundaries or shared responsibilities. He would leave dirty dishes in the sink for days, never take out the trash, and frequently borrow my clothes without asking. On top of that, he would often bring his coworkers over without telling me, and sometimes they stayed late into the night, which made my apartment feel chaotic and uncomfortable. I tried talking to him about it multiple times. I explained that I'm used to living alone and need certain routines to feel comfortable, and I outlined basic rules about chores, guests, and personal space. Ethan apologized initially, but didn't change his behavior. It became increasingly stressful for me. I started feeling anxious just being at home and found it hard to focus on my work. The breaking point came last weekend. Ethan invited a group of friends over while I was working from home. I specifically told him not to have anyone over because I had a major deadline, and he promised he wouldn't. When I came out of my room around noon to get lunch, I found 5 people in my living room drinking, eating my groceries, and watching TV. I lost my temper and demanded they leave immediately. Ethan argued that he thought I meant after lunch, not during. The argument quickly escalated. Ethan started yelling about how unfair I am, how our parents never supported him, and how I always make everything about myself. He then brought up a past incident when I had refused to lend him money for a plane ticket to visit our parents, saying I had abandoned him. This hurt because I had actually offered to help in other ways, like helping him look for flights online and suggesting cheaper options. The conversation devolved into yelling, and eventually, I told him he could not stay with me any longer. I told him he had until the next morning to find a hotel or ask a friend to stay with them. After he left, he called our parents crying, telling them I had kicked him out and that I'm heartless and always take their side. Our parents immediately called me, demanding that I let Ethan back in and accusing me of being selfish and cruel. I tried explaining that it was not a matter of me not caring for him, but that his behavior in my home had become intolerable and that I could not maintain my mental health under these circumstances. They responded by saying I was overreacting and that family should help each other without conditions. Since then, I've been getting texts and calls from Ethan saying that I'm the worst brother and that I should be ashamed of myself for leaving him alone in a new city. He mentioned that he doesn't have many friends here and feels unsafe. Meanwhile, our parents are pressuring me to apologize and take him back. My close friends, who have seen how chaotic my apartment became, support my decision, saying I have every right to set boundaries. I feel conflicted because I do care about my brother and want to support him, but I also feel that allowing him to stay under these conditions would be damaging to my mental health and would reward his disrespectful behavior. I have offered to help him find an Airbnb or temporary sublet, and even offered to help financially if he finds a suitable place, but he refuses to consider anything other than moving back in. I'm now wondering if I'm actually in the wrong for standing my ground. My parents and Ethan make me feel guilty, but I honestly feel like I'm being reasonable given the circumstances. I want to be there for my brother, but I also need to protect my own space and mental well-being. AITA for refusing to let him stay with me after the argument? Or am I being selfish by not putting my brother's needs above my own? AITA for canceling my sister's wedding venue reservation after I paid for it when she told everyone it was actually her fiancé's family who covered it. I, 34F, have been close to my younger sister Megan, 29F, most of our lives. Growing up, our parents struggled financially, and I ended up taking on a lot of responsibility early. I worked part-time through high school and college and eventually built a stable career. Megan, on the other hand, had a much easier time financially once she graduated because she lived with me for a while and saved money. I never held that against her because I love her and wanted to help her get started in life. Last year, Megan got engaged to her fiancé, Daniel, 31M. They were really excited and immediately started planning a wedding. The problem was that neither of them had saved very much. Daniel works freelance and Megan works in retail management, so they had a limited budget. They started talking about doing a very small courthouse ceremony, which honestly made Megan really sad because she had always dreamed of a big wedding. I had recently gotten a promotion and a decent bonus at work, so I offered to help. Specifically, I offered to pay for their venue as my wedding gift to them. I made it very clear that this was a gift from me because I wanted Megan to have the celebration she dreamed about. She cried when I offered and hugged me for like 5 minutes. Daniel also thanked me and said it meant a lot. The venue they picked was a beautiful renovated barn about an hour outside the city with a lake and gardens around it. It was not extremely expensive compared to some places, but it was still a few $1,000s for the reservation and deposit. I paid the deposit directly to the venue and signed the agreement since I was the one paying. Megan and Daniel were thrilled and immediately started planning decorations and guest lists. For the next couple of months, everything seemed fine. Megan kept thanking me and would send me photos of decoration ideas and seating charts. I was happy to help and felt good knowing I could do something meaningful for her. Then things got weird. A few weeks ago, Megan posted on social media announcing their wedding venue. In the caption, she thanked Daniel's parents for generously providing the venue so we can celebrate with everyone we love. I was confused when I saw it. At first, I thought maybe they had also contributed something and Megan was just thanking them publicly. Later that day, one of my cousins messaged me asking if Daniel's family was wealthy since they apparently paid for the venue. That was the first moment I realized Megan had been telling people that his family paid for it. I called Megan and asked her about it. She sounded uncomfortable and eventually admitted that she had been telling people the venue was paid for by Daniel's parents. Her reasoning was that Daniel's parents care a lot about appearances, and she didn't want people thinking her side of the family couldn't contribute to the wedding. I reminded her that I literally paid for the venue. She said she knew that, but claimed it was easier socially if people believed his parents covered it. I told her it felt really disrespectful that she was erasing my contribution entirely. She said I was overreacting and that it shouldn't matter who gets credit because the wedding is about her and Daniel, not me. I tried to let it go at first, but then at a family dinner, Daniel's mother started talking about how generous they had been to secure such a beautiful venue for the wedding. Everyone at the table praised them. Megan just sat there smiling and didn't correct anything. She didn't even look at me. That was the moment I felt really hurt. It wasn't about needing public praise, but about the fact that she was comfortable letting people believe something that simply wasn't true. After thinking about it for a few days, I called Megan again and told her I wanted her to correct the story with the people she had told. I said she didn't have to make a big announcement, but at least stop telling people Daniel's parents paid and clarify the truth if it came up. She refused. She said it would make Daniel's parents look bad and cause drama before the wedding. She also said I was making her feel guilty for accepting my gift. At that point, I reminded her that the contract for the venue was under my name since I paid the deposit. I told her that if she couldn't even acknowledge that I paid for it, I didn't feel comfortable continuing to fund it. She accused me of trying to sabotage her wedding over something petty. After another argument where she doubled down, I contacted the venue and canceled the reservation. According to the contract, I was still within the window where I could cancel and only lose part of the deposit. When Megan found out, she completely lost it. She called me crying and yelling that I had ruined her wedding plans. Now our parents are involved, and they think I should have just ignored the situation and let Megan have her moment. Daniel's family is also apparently upset because they have been telling people they secured the venue, and now Megan has to find somewhere else on short notice. Part of me feels guilty because I know weddings are stressful and emotional. But another part of me feels like I was being taken advantage of and then erased from the story entirely. So AITA for canceling the venue reservation that I paid for after my sister kept telling everyone someone else covered the cost. AITA for refusing to let my parents store all of their belongings in my house indefinitely after they sold their home. I, 37F, live alone in a 3-bedroom house that I bought about 5 years ago. I worked really hard to get here. I spent most of my 20s paying off student loans and saving money so I could afford a place of my own. My house is not huge, but it's comfortable. I use one bedroom as my bedroom, one as an office since I work remotely, and the third as a guest room. I like having my space organized and peaceful. About 6 months ago, my parents, both early 60s, decided they wanted to downsize. They had lived in the same house for almost 30 years and said the maintenance was getting to be too much. Their plan was to sell their house quickly and then spend some time traveling while deciding where they wanted to settle permanently. When they first told me about this plan, I was happy for them. They sounded excited and said they wanted to enjoy retirement. The only thing they asked was if they could store a few boxes at my place temporarily while they were figuring out their next move. I said yes immediately because a few boxes didn't sound like a big deal. But as the weeks went on, the plan kept changing. First, it became a few boxes and some small furniture. Then it became a couple rooms worth of stuff. Eventually, they told me they wanted to store nearly everything they owned in my house while they traveled for at least a year. I was honestly shocked when they explained this because they had already sold their house and apparently never arranged for any kind of storage unit. Their plan was basically to move the majority of their belongings into my house and leave it there indefinitely. They showed up with a moving truck about a month after their house sold. I thought it would be manageable at first, but the amount of stuff was overwhelming. They filled my entire guest room with boxes stacked to the ceiling. They also filled half of my garage and started placing furniture in my living room and hallway. I tried to stay calm and suggested they might want to rent a storage unit for the larger items. My dad immediately dismissed the idea and said storage units are expensive and unnecessary when I have plenty of space. That's where the problem started. I explained that I actually don't have plenty of space. My house is designed for one person, and I need my office to work. I also want to keep my guest room functional because I occasionally have friend visit. My parents argued that I was being unreasonable because the items would only be there temporarily. But when I asked what temporary meant, they said probably 1 to 2 years while they traveled and decided where to move. At that point, I told them I wasn't comfortable storing everything they owned for that long. I said I would be happy to keep a limited number of boxes, but the majority of their furniture and belongings should go into a proper storage unit. They reacted very badly. My mom said I was being selfish and ungrateful after everything they had done for me growing up. My dad said I was prioritizing convenience over family. They also pointed out that I have the largest home among our immediate family, so it makes sense for me to help. The argument escalated because they had already moved a huge amount of stuff into my house by that point. I felt pressured because the moving truck was literally sitting in my driveway while we were arguing about it. Eventually, I told them they needed to take most of the items somewhere else that same day. I said they could leave a few boxes, but I was not turning my house into their long-term storage facility. They ended up taking the remaining furniture to a storage company, but they were extremely upset with me. My mom cried and said she couldn't believe I would treat them like strangers. My dad told me I had embarrassed them in front of the movers. Since then, things have been tense. They're currently traveling and barely speaking to me except for occasional short messages. Few relatives have also reached out saying I should have just helped them because they are my parents and this is a temporary situation. But from my perspective, asking someone to store an entire household's worth of belongings for up to 2 years is a huge request. It would completely take over my living space, and I don't think it's fair to expect that when storage units exist specifically for this purpose. I still feel guilty because I know they were stressed during the move, and I might have made things harder for them in the moment. At the same time, I feel like they made a huge assumption about my home without actually asking first. Now the situation has created a lot of tension in the family, and I'm starting to wonder if I handled it too harshly. AITA for refusing to let my parents store almost everything they own in my house for potentially 1 to 2 years after they sold their home. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.